Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever you're watching this Guidance 3, and welcome to the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, the MBTI, okay? This is always my most fun part, my most favorite part of the class, because we really get a chance to start diving into some of the more personal stuff as it relates to assessments. We've already done the work importance profiler, we're already doing the work-related values, which is still personal, but not as deep as some of this stuff that we're going to be getting into with the MBTI and with the strong interest inventory moving into next week. So really important as we go through this work today that you're kind of following along. I want you to take notes. There's going to be some times in this presentation where I'm going to ask you to write some certain things down because you're going to need that information and you're going to have to accompany that with the results from the MBTI that we're going to do in this week to be able to write your reflection, which is an assignment that's coming up. Okay, so really important that we're following along and that you're, paying close attention and really thinking critically about how these things might relate to you. Okay, one kind of caveat before we get into this. As we do this work, as we do the assessments, I want you to keep in mind that there is no right and there is no wrong. Okay. Also keep in mind that these codes are not like stuck to you. So if by the end of this, you get your 4-letter code and you do some research on it and you read about it and you're like, this doesn't sound like me at all, that's fine. You're not stuck with this. This doesn't have to represent you, okay? Again, I talk about it a lot. It's not a magic pill. It's just work that we need to do. If this code is perfectly you, it represents you perfectly, then great. We'll use that as a launching point to start doing some more research. But if not, it's not the end of the world. We'll come back to the drawing board. We'll figure out what might have went wrong and move on from there, okay? So let's get into it. Okay, so quick little brief history. This is Carl Jung. It's not actually Carl Jung. It's clearly a cartoon representation of Carl Jung. But this is Carl Jung, and he was a psychologist a long, long time ago. Okay, and really the MBTI is based on his theory, which was called the typological theory. Okay, and really what this typological theory was is that Carl Jung believed that everybody in the universe uses the same 4 primary functions in order to kind of take in and make sense of their universe, make sense of their surrounding, okay? You should be able to see it at the bottom right there. I can't see it because that's where my little camera is, but it's sensing, intuition, thinking, and feeling, okay? Sensing, intuition, thinking, and feeling, and we're going to learn more about that as we go through, okay? But just to kind of frame the work that we're doing here today, the MBTI is based on the typological theory, which suggests that everybody uses the same 4 functions to take in and make sense of their universe, okay? This mother and daughter pair, wonderful, wonderful women, Catherine Cooks Briggs and Isabel Myers, took that theory and they kind of elaborated on it, okay? So what they propose is that each one of those psychological functions that we learned about in the last slide had 2 opposite ends, okay? So each one of them has 2 opposite ends, which now means that there are 8, okay? And the reason why this is important is because giving each psychological function an opposite end, so one here, one over here, allows us to not have to choose, but allows us to be able to be on the spectrum in between, right? Because I think what's true is that nobody is all one thing or all another, right? We're all kind of variations of certain things. And sometimes it's also like, kind of depends on the day. In some situations, you might be more extroverted. In some situations, you might be more introverted. And so the idea of proposing that each one of these psychological functions has opposite ends and that we are all on a spectrum allows us to not have to marry one or the other, but allows us to kind of have, be complex and have, days where we might be more one and more the other, okay? And the reason why they decided to do this work, they were motivated by women entering the workforce for the first time during the war, okay? So way back in the day when women weren't necessarily in the workforce, all the men went away to go to war. The women had to keep the country going, right? And they did a phenomenal job because, of course, they can. But because they hadn't really worked before, these 2 ladies kind of created the MBTI to kind of figure out, okay, if you've never worked, let's see if we can match your personality with different types of work so that you can go and be the best version of whatever profession that you were entering. Okay, and so what they attempted to do was identify what would be the most comfortable and effective types of work for women who, again, were entering the workforce to keep the country going. Okay, really important. So the first thing I want to have you consider is this. And if you'd like to do this with me, I'd like you to go ahead and do this activity with me because I think it's really cool. I want you to get a piece of paper and I want you to grab a pen. Okay, I want you to put the pen down on the table. Okay, and when I say go, what I'd like you to do is to pick up the pen and sign your name, like you were signing a check, like you're trying to get your money from your job. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go, stop. Okay. What I'd like you to do now is put your pen back down, and I want you to pick it up with your opposite hand and try to sign your name. Okay? And if you've done this activity correctly, it should kind of be awkward unless you're like the most ambidextrous person in the whole universe and you can use both of your hands perfectly well. Okay? And really what this exercise is trying to do is trying to show you the differences between preferences, right? As we go through these dichotomies today, you're going to see some where you're like, I do both of those things. Sometimes I'm that, sometimes I'm that. Totally depends on the situation, right? And really what I want you to consider is, what is your preference most of the time? Okay? If I asked you to pick up your pen and sign your name, depending on whether or not you're right or left-handed, you're going to do what you normally do. You're going to pick up that pen, you're going to sign your name, right? Now, if I asked you to do it with your left hand, you probably could. It's not going to look very good. Probably looks like chicken scratch, right? But if you had to like endorse a check so you could get your money because your dominant hand was broken, you could probably make it happen. Okay. So again, as we go through these, I want you to think, what is the thing that I do most of the time? Okay. What's the thing that comes the most natural to me? Is it this or is it this? Okay. Okay. Let's get into it. So the first thing I want you to consider is this. What is your perfect Friday night? Okay. And I want you to think of this as if you have no responsibilities to anybody or anything, and keep it within reason, because some of you are in high school and I don't want to hear any crazy answers about your perfect Friday night. Earmuffs, earmuffs, earmuffs. But I want you to think of what your perfect Friday night is, right? So you've had a long week of school, you've had a long week of work, and it's Friday and you're like, I just need to wind down. Okay. Does your Friday night look a little bit more like the left, where you're with people, you're kind of a little bit more social, you're kind of interacting with other folks? Or after, a long week of work, a long week of school, do you need a little bit more alone time, like the young lady on the right-hand side, right? Just reading her book, a little bit more tranquil, a little bit more personal. I just need a little bit of me time so I can recharge my battery so I can go back out and be the best version of myself come Monday. Okay? Okay. What we're talking about here is extroversion versus introversion, okay? And really what we're getting at here is, how do you get your energy, right? What energizes you? We talk a lot about sharpening the saw, right? What is the thing that recharges your battery, okay? So if you're somebody that has a preference for extroversion on the left-hand side, you're going to find your energy by being with others, okay? So you're going to have that long week of work, that long week of school, and you're going to be like, you know what? I need to go and see my people. I need to get with my community of folks, whether it be your family, your friends, whatever it is. Being with them kind of fills my cup, right? Sometimes extroverts enjoy being the center of attention. We tend to act first and then think, as opposed to like think it through and then act. Some say we tend to kind of think out loud. We can also sometimes be easy to read. And the reason we can be easier to read is because we share information a little bit more freely, right? You're not worried about sharing personal information, right? You're an extrovert. You're going to share it, not a problem, okay? We tend to be a little bit more enthusiastic. I wonder if you guys can tell which one I am. Wink, wink. And then breadth over depth. I'm going to come back and explain what that is, but I think that's a really good one as well. Okay. And then conversely, on the right-hand side, if you have a preference for introversion, you find your energy by spending time alone, right? So again, you've had that long week. You need some me time. You might go home. You might open a book, watch a show, put your phone down, right? Put the screen down so the notifications don't pop up and distract you. Sometimes we might avoid being the center of attention, right? We tend to think things through a little bit more before we act. What are all the different possible scenarios? How could this go left? How could this go right? Right? We tend to be a little bit more private with our information, right? We don't necessarily share a whole lot about ourselves. We tend to be a little bit more to ourselves about those things. And depth over breadth, okay? Really what that means is this. If you can't tell already, I'm clearly on the extroversion side. Breadth over depth means we like to know a little bit about a lot, right? We want breadth. We want to know about a little bit about everything, as opposed to knowing one or two things really, really deeply, right? Where conversely, introverts, sometimes, if you have a preference for introversion, you might really only be interested in two or three things, but you want to know everything about those things, right? You want to get in depth with those things, as opposed to knowing a breadth of things, okay? So depth over breadth, I think that's a really good way to think about it. So I want you to take a quick second, look at both of these, and tell yourself and kind of think to yourself, which one best represents you, okay? And then I want you to write it down somewhere. Write it down on that piece of paper where you did the chicken scratch for your signature. Okay. So are you a little bit more aligned with extroversion, or do you have more of a preference for introversion? Okay. All right. This is a picture of an apple. It's a fake apple. Okay. And what I want you to do is just take a second and think of all of the different things that come to mind when you look at this apple. Okay. Just take a minute and say, okay, what is it's red? There's green leaves, there's a bite. It looks like the Macintosh sign. I haven't had an apple in a long time. I should probably eat some more fruits. Okay. Whatever it is. Okay. In this section, what we're talking about is sensing versus intuition. And really what we're trying to get at is how do you gather information? Okay. We all gather information. We all take in information a little bit differently. And sensing versus intuition is really trying to get to the heart of that. Okay. So if you're on the left-hand side, if you have a preference for sensing, you trust what is certain and what is concrete. Okay. What is certain and what is concrete. You're most likely pretty practical, very commonsensical, and you present information very step by step, right? Specific, literal, and detailed. So somebody that might have a preference for sensing is going to look at that apple and they're going to say, it's red, it's an apple, there's dots on it, there's green leaves, why are we doing this? This is silly, right? On the other hand, conversely, somebody who is more of an intuitor, they're going to trust their inspiration and their inference a little bit more. Okay. They like new ideas. They really value imagination and innovation. Okay. They might use metaphors and analogies to kind of present information in like a roundabout way. So they're going to look at that apple and they're going to go, okay, it's red. It's an apple. I should really eat more fruit. When's the last time I had fruit? Fruit salad. Oh, I should make salad tonight, right? They're going to kind of go off a little bit off on a tangent, right? So they're going to end up somewhere that has nothing to do with the original picture. Right. I hope that makes sense. I hope that's a good example. And truthfully, when I've done this with students, I get the whole gamut. Right. I get somebody that like, oh, that apple was really red. It must have got a lot of sun and a lot of water. The person who watered that must really care about their fruits. They're probably a good person. Oh, they're a good person. They probably have a family. They're probably a good parent. I've had them go off on super duper tangents. Right. But really what we're trying to get at is how do you gather information? Right. How do you make sense of things? Okay, so again, I want you to look at sensing, I want you to look at intuition, and I want you to write down whichever one best represents you right now. And again, there's no right, there's no wrong, just trying to get a better picture of you. Okay, all right. Now, normally for this next one, I have a video of someone singing very terribly on American Idol. I'm actually going to post it for you guys because it's pretty funny. But what I want you to consider this. I want you to consider that you are about to go out with your friends. Okay, so you guys are getting ready to go out wherever it is that you go. And your friend comes in and they have a terrible outfit on. And you're like, oh no, this is not going to work. We cannot go to this place looking this crazy. We are going to get ridiculed. Okay. Are you somebody, if your friend comes in looking crazy, are you somebody that's going to be like, hey, is that a new outfit? That's really nice. I just think that maybe this place is like a little bit more casual. Maybe you might want to do this, that. Or are you the person that's going to go, hey, you look terrible and you should change? Okay. And really think about that. Are you somebody that's going to be a little bit more blunt, a little bit more straightforward? Or are you going to be somebody that's going to kind of dance around it a little bit and try to save their feelings a little bit? Okay. What we're talking about here is thinking versus feeling. Okay. And really what this is about how you make decisions, right? How do you make decisions? Okay. On the left-hand side, people who tend to be thinkers, they kind of step back, they analyze, but they really value logic, justice, and fairness. Okay. Logic, justice, and fairness. And what that means is that there's one standard for everybody, right? Everybody gets the same treatment. I'm going to shoot straight with you. Okay. Sometimes they can be seen as blunt or straight up, but they prefer truth over tact. So they would rather tell you the truth and shoot straight with you than be tactful and kind of dance around the situation a little bit, right? They think a little bit more with their head and a little less with their heart, right? So looking at that, somebody who might be a thinker might probably be like, hey, dude, you look really bad and we can't go anywhere like that. right? Now, conversely, on the other hand, somebody who's a feeler, they value empathy and harmony and peace a little bit more, right? They kind of make room for exceptions. They naturally like to please others, and they prefer tact over truth. So somebody on that side might say, hey, you look amazing. Amazing. Honestly, you look amazing. However, this place, it might not be like that. Maybe there's something else you have that we can maybe look at, but that looks sweet, right? You might try to let them down a little easier. Okay. Another really good example of this is like if you've ever been in a relationship, right? If you're somebody that's been in a relationship and you've had to kind of break it off with somebody, if you've said, hey, it's not you, it's me, you're really great, but it's me, I'm a mess, you're probably a little bit more on the feeling side. If you've been in a relationship and you have to break it off and you be like, I'm great, you got some work to do, then you're probably a little bit more thinking. Okay. So again, looking at both of these, reading them both, I want you to take a look at them, think about it, and I want you to write down which one you think best represents you. Okay. Are you more thinking or are you a little bit more feeling? Okay. And this can be a tough one, right? This can be a tough one because I think this one is really situational, right? When I'm dealing like with my brother, for example, I'm very much very much thinking, hey, dude, you look nuts. You can't do this, right? When I'm dealing with maybe like my nephew or my niece or my partner, I might be like, hey, you look great. Maybe we could try something else, right? So it could be situational for you, right? And this is why, I say at the beginning that you want to kind of think about what is the thing that you do most of the time, okay? So you're more thinking, you're more feeling. Write that down. You should have 3 now. One for extroversion versus introversion, one for sensing intuition, and this one for thinking and feeling, okay? Okay, it is moving day, okay? So some of you maybe have already had to move before. Some of you may never moved. If you've never moved, I just want you to kind of imagine this and think about this. It's moving day, okay? So let's say in this hypothetical situation, I am your landlord. Very weird that you'd be taking a class with your landlord, but here we are nonetheless, okay? So it's the 1st of the month, and I say on the 30th of the month, you got to be out, okay? Fast forward, it is now day 25. You got 5 days left. Does your house look like the left? Boxes, nicely boxed, stacked, all categorized, kitchen, linens, master bed, den? Or does your house, which is my house because I'm the landlord, I guess, look like this one on the right with boxes everywhere, stuff everywhere, not packed, bit of a mess? Okay. Which one is it? Okay. And be honest with yourselves. Don't answer how you would like to be. Answer how you actually think you are. Okay. Another really great example, and the reason why this is such a great example is because I know who you are, because I grade your assignments, is whether or not, let's say that you're a student and you have a 10-page paper due in 10 days. Are you somebody who is going to do a little bit every day so that you don't have to go wild on day 9? Or if you have 10 days to do your paper, you're like, that means I got 9 days to chill, right? You're going to do it at the last minute, okay? Now, what we're talking about here is judging versus perceiving, okay? And this is really important that I kind of frame it like this. Judging does not mean that you're judgmental, okay? Sometimes students will see that and they'll be like, judging? I'm not judgmental, I'm fair. That's not me. And that's not necessarily what this means, okay? Furthermore, perceiving, you might see perceiving called prospecting, okay? It's kind of a nicer word than saying perceiving, okay? But really what perceiving means is kind of like, I'm going to wait a little bit. I'm going to wait. I like to keep my options open, right? Some people would call it procrastination, but I don't think it's necessarily that, because people who are perceiving kind of need that pressure in order to work. They need that kind of deadline in order to do well, okay? What we're talking about with judging and perceiving is, how do you organize your life, right? How do you organize your life? People on the left-hand side who have a preference for judging tend to be happiest after decisions are made. Okay, they want to make decisions. They want to know what's going on. Okay, they're absolutely work first and play later if there's time, right? So if they have a paper to do and they get a phone call and it's their friend's birthday, they're going to be like, hey, look, You know I love to be there. I love you, man, but I got this work to do. Maybe I'll take you out next week. Me and you will just do something ourselves. Okay? Very much work first, play later. Okay? They set goals to be done on time. They're very task oriented, and they get satisfaction from completing tasks, right? So somebody who might have a preference for judging might have a checklist, right? And think about that. If you're somebody that has a checklist and you get satisfaction from being like, done, 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 yeah, I did a good job, right? Then you might be somebody who has a preference for judging, okay? Conversely, perceivers, which is me, are happiest keeping their options open, right? They don't want to make any decisions. They're like, well, just go with the flow, right? They're very much play first and work later, right? So in the same example that I used before, if they are starting a paper and they find out that it's their friend's birthday, they're going to be like, I'm going to have to get this paper done later because there's a party that needs me at it, right? They change their goals as new information is available. They're very adaptive. They like to adapt to new situations, and they get satisfaction from starting, not necessarily completing. Okay, they get satisfaction from starting, right? They see deadlines as elastic. We'll move it around. We'll figure it out, right? Another good way to kind of look at this is like if you're somebody who's been on vacation, are you somebody who looks at an itinerary and says, on Monday we're doing this at 4 o'clock and this at 5 o'clock and this at 6 o'clock? Or are you somebody that's like, once we get there, we're going to figure it out. We're going to have a good time, right? If you got that itinerary, you're likely on the judging side. If you don't got that itinerary, you want to keep it open, you're likely perceiving or perspective. Okay? So I want you to take a second, look at both of those, and I want you to write down which one best represents you. Okay? So at the end of it, you should have a 4-letter code. Maybe something like ESTJ or ENFP, something like that. Okay? And I want you to keep that and make sure that you have that, because when you do your actual assessment, you may get a different code. And then in your reflection assignment, I want to know what your self-assessment was, which is going to be this one, what your self-assessment 4-letter code was, and what your results from the actual assessment were, right? And we're going to compare them, we're going to contrast those, and we're going to look at those, and we're going to dive deep into those, okay? I hope you guys found this fun. I always love this part. I think you guys are going to love this assessment. Sometimes these assessments can be super real and like just kind of like so accurate that they're almost crazy. You're like, is this guy doing voodoo or is this an actual like class? But I really think you guys are going to like them. I know I love them. And I do them every time I teach this class, and it's always, a little bit different and always very insightful. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let's have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you soon. Okay.